smells worse? Him or shit in the bottle?
Clint Eastwood's career is truly one of a kind in Hollywood. With an impressive run that's lasted over 8 decades, he is not just a success story of an actor turned director, he truly is a beloved icon. Since he started his career in the 1950s, he forged a special relationship with both American and global audiences, one that transcends movie genre preferences and individual political orientations. The actor's first shot to fame took place in the late 1960s as the Man with No Name in Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy, redefining the Western hero with his gritty, stoic, and morally complex persona. From that point on, Eastwood's career evolved as he took on increasingly varied roles. From the hard-edged cop, Harry Callahan in Dirty Harry, to the lead in oddball comedies like Every Which Way But Loose. In 1971, Eastwood stepped behind the camera for the first time with Play Misty For Me. The title's critical and commercial success cemented Eastwood's status as a double threat, with the actor proving he was more than just a star. He was a talented director too. Eastwood's ability to move effortlessly between action, drama, and even comedy shows just how versatile he is as an actor. His commanding presence and laid-back style have made a lasting impact on cinema, keeping audiences hooked for generations. In the end, we are left with the following consensus. It's okay if you don't like one of Eastwood's movies as long as you don't dislike the man himself. With over 60 acting credits in his name, there are several underrated gems that showcase the actor's caliber. These titles didn't necessarily win any major accolades and are rarely mentioned when discussing the actor's filmography. They tend to be less well known, underappreciated by both critics and fans, and often overshadowed by more prominent titles. So, to give them the attention they deserve, here are my top 5 underrated Eastwood movies listed in chronological order. At number 5, we have the Eiger Sanction. Clint Eastwood as James Bond and Superman? That almost happened in the 1970s, but the actor ultimately passed on both offers, preferring more grounded roles. Still, in the mid-1970s, he became attached to star in the adaptation of Trevelyan's spy novel, The Eiger Sanction. In the movie, you'll find Clint Eastwood in a role that blends espionage, action, and mountain climbing, a combo that doesn't scream typical Clint Eastwood fare to most people. In the Eiger Sanction, Eastwood plays a retired assassin and art professor, Jonathan Hemlock, who's pulled back into the world of international intrigue. His mission to take out a killer while scaling the treacherous Eiger Mountain. It's part spy thriller, part adventure film, and you can just feel that 70s grit dripping through every scene. Despite doing decent business at the box office, the movie failed to be a staple in Eastwood's career. Why, you may ask? First, the Eiger Sanction came out when the spy genre was already crowded, and some say in decline, with James Bond dominating the scene. The blend of Cold War espionage with rock climbing might have been too much of a mashup for audiences at the time, and the final output was deemed forgettable. Secondly, Eastwood himself directed it, and some critics felt like his direction was uneven. Fantastic when it came to the climbing sequences, less so when the camera was capturing everything else. So it kind of got lost in the shuffle and didn't have the impact some of his more iconic movies did. And now for some of the reasons why you should watch this title. Number 1, the unique genre mix. This movie stands out because it's a rare blend of spy thriller and adventure film. It's not your typical Clint Eastwood gunslinger role. He's got that cerebral edge, and you get to see him climb mountains while dodging assassins. It's a refreshing departure from his usual fare, and if that doesn't convince you, then I don't know what else will. Then there's the impressive stunts. Speaking of mountains, Eastwood did many of the climbing stunts himself on the actual Eiger, which is no small feat. In today's age of CGI and green screens, it's wild to see those practical stunts in action. You really feel the danger, and it adds to the intensity of the whole film. At number 3, we have the cinematography. The mountain sequences are breathtaking. The Eiger itself almost becomes a character in the movie, looming over everything and adding that layer of real-world danger. There's something about seeing Eastwood go toe-to-toe with nature that makes it all more gripping. And finally, the Eiger Sanction actually delivers an early glimpse of Eastwood's stellar directing. Whilst it's true that the Eiger Sanction wasn't perfect from a directorial standpoint, it's a fascinating look at Clint Eastwood honing his skills behind the camera. He'd go on to become an iconic director, and this movie gives you a sense of his early ambitions and willingness to take risks. The Eiger Sanction may not be a top pick when it comes to Clint Eastwood's filmography, but it's a hidden gem that showcases his versatility as both an actor and a director. It's a wild ride through the spy world, a thrilling mountain climbing adventure, and if you are an Eastwood fan looking to dive deeper into his catalog, this one is a must-see. Also, a special shout out to George Kennedy's supporting performance, a nice breather from his usually 1970s role of Joe Petroni, a man who proved he could run an airport all by himself in the Airport franchise. Summing it up, the Eiger Sanction is solid entertainment. Give it a shot. It's more than just an action flick, it's a testament to Eastwood's knack for pushing boundaries. And speaking of boundaries, next item on the list is 1977's The Gauntlet. This entry features the iconic actor collaborating once again with his favorite director. Eastwood's directorial work on this movie was deeply influenced by his mentor Don Siegel, with whom he had partnered on several previous films. This influence is particularly visible in the gritty realism and straightforward narrative we find in this 1977 title. In The Gauntlet, Clint Eastwood plays Ben Shockley, a down-and-out cop who's been given what seems to be a simple task: escort a witness, Gus Malley, played by Sandra Locke, from Las Vegas to Phoenix. But here's the catch: everyone from the mob to corrupt officials is out to stop them. What begins as a routine assignment turns into a relentless and explosive journey, with Shockley and Malley dodging bullets, helicopters, and a seemingly endless number of bad guys. One reason The Gauntlet doesn't often get mentioned when film fans discuss Eastwood's greatest hits is that it came out during an era when the actor was heavily associated with his Dirty Harry persona. So audiences may have felt like this gritty action flick was more of the same, but without their favorite character, even though this film has a totally different vibe. Another reason, and one heavily pointed out by critics, is that The Gauntlet had a more over-the-top tone, which threw off those who were expecting something a bit more grounded. The movie's wild action sequences were seen as borderline campy back then. Yet despite these criticisms, here's why this title is still worth your time. It's a high-octane ride. The movie is action-packed from start to finish. If you are into car chases and shootouts, The Gauntlet delivers in spades. One of the film's standout moments involves Eastwood driving a bus completely riddled with bullets through a gauntlet of police gunfire. It's chaotic, crazy, and a ton of fun. Number 2, Eastwood's chemistry with Sandra Locke. Clint Eastwood and Sandra Locke were a real-life couple at the time, and you can feel their chemistry on screen. Their dynamic brings some humor and tension to the film, as Shockley and Malley start off as reluctant partners but eventually form a bond. Their banter gives the movie a little more depth than just pure action. Number 3, Ben Shockley, a flawed and relatable hero. Unlike Eastwood's more iconic roles like the near-invisible Dirty Harry, Ben Shockley is far from perfect. He's a washed-up, hard-drinking cop who's made mistakes and is just trying to get by. This adds a layer of vulnerability to his character that you don't often see in Eastwood's filmography, at least not up until that point. Shockley is not the toughest or the smartest, but his determination makes him a hero you root for, even when things get messy. It's a more human side of Eastwood that truly deserves appreciation. And finally, the fourth reason: the film's subversive take on authority. One of the most interesting aspects of The Gauntlet is its anti-authoritarian streak. The film doesn't just pit Eastwood against criminals, it inverses the entire corrupt system. The bad guys aren't just mobsters, they're cops and officials in power, which brings a new layer of social commentary to all the action. The Gauntlet may not get as much love as Clint Eastwood's more serious films, but it's a high-energy action flick that's got heart, humor, and some seriously unforgettable scenes. If you love a good against all odds story with plenty of explosions and a bit of social commentary thrown in, this one is definitely worth checking out. It's a wild ride, and seeing Clint Eastwood navigate through all the mayhem is just plain entertaining. And as for the over-the-topness of the sequences, the Gauntlet is far tamer than 1983's excess fest, Firefox. And speaking of the 80s, here's the third pick on the list, 1984's Tightrope. In the early 1980s, Clint Eastwood's career seemed to be all over the place as he shifted between different genres and projects, from light-hearted comedies to intense thrillers. While some of these films were commercially successful, they didn't necessarily push Eastwood's acting legacy forward. That changed with Tightrope. In this 1984 title, Clint Eastwood plays Wes Block, a New Orleans detective with a dark side. Block is hunting down a serial killer who preys on women in the city's seedy underbelly. But as the investigation deepens, Block starts to realize the killer's twisted mind mirrors some of his own hidden desires. It's a psychological thriller with a noir vibe, giving Eastwood a chance to portray a more conflicted and morally ambiguous character than what we were used to seeing. Tightrope was a moderate success at the box office and a critical hit at the time, but has largely been forgotten by Eastwood fans, mainly because of how disappointed some audience members felt in 1984. The morally complex nature of Wes Block was a bit too unsettling for fans of Eastwood's more traditional roles, with the audience not fully buying the perverted old deviant act. Also, the film's darker, more sexually charged themes turned off some viewers who were more accustomed to simpler action-driven plots. And if you're wondering why this movie is worth watching, here are 4 reasons that will help you make up your mind. Number 1, a dark and complicated character. Wes Block is one of Clint Eastwood's most nuanced roles. Unlike his typical stoic heroes, Block is deeply flawed and haunted by his own demons. The tension comes not just from the murder mystery, but from watching Block wrestle with his inner darkness. It's a rare chance to see the actor play a character who's not just battling bad guys, but his own moral conflicts. Number 2, the thriller elements are genuinely gripping. This movie does a great job at keeping you on edge. It's not just about catching a killer, it's about getting into the psychology behind the crimes. The mystery is well paced, with plenty of tension as the killer seems to stay one step ahead of Block. If you enjoy slow burn suspense with a psychological twist, Tightrope delivers. Number 3, the exploration of New Orleans as a character. Now, this seems to be a recurring reason to watch the movies on this list, but trust me, it's justified. The setting in this film is one of its strengths. New Orleans isn't just a backdrop. The city's shadowy atmospheric streets, with all their quirks and vices, almost act as another character in the film. The gritty, off-the-beaten-path locations enhance the noir feel and give the movie an eerie tone that truly sticks with you. Number 4, an unconventional love story. The relationship between Clint Eastwood's character and Geneviève Bujold's Beryl Thibodeau is not just about attraction, but also about finding solace and understanding amidst the chaos and violence surrounding them. Furthermore, Beryl, the counselor, represents the moral and psychological side of Block's journey, elevating her above the typical female supporting characters seen in Eastwood films. Tightrope might not get the recognition it deserves, but it's a fascinating character study wrapped in a tense thriller. It pushes Clint Eastwood into unfamiliar territory, offering a grittier, more psychological story than fans might expect. If you're looking for a film that explores deeper themes while still keeping you on the edge of your seat, this is definitely one to add to your watch list. And with that, let's move on to the next underrated Eastwood film, the fifth and final Dirty Harry title, The Dead Pool. By the time actors play iconic action characters for the fifth time, they almost always end up parodying themselves. Eastwood was well aware of where he stood as an action hero in 1988, a year marked by a profound change in the genre, and agreed to a final outing as Inspector Callahan before retiring the character for good. In The Dead Pool, Clint Eastwood returns as Inspector Harry Callahan, the tough, no-nonsense cop from the Dirty Harry series. This time, Callahan gets wrapped up in a sinister game when he discovers his name on a dead pool, a betting list where people gamble on the deaths of celebrities. As Callahan investigates, the bodies start piling up, and he must stop the killer before becoming the next victim. Now, the main reason why the Deadpool isn't as fondly remembered is that by 1988, the Dirty Harry series had started to feel a bit formulaic to some audience members. The novelty of Callahan's hard-edged, rebellious cop persona had worn off after several films. Additionally, the movie's mix of action and humor, particularly with the more outlandish plot elements, like the remote-controlled car chase, may have struck some viewers as a departure from the grittier tone of earlier installments. But beyond the presence of both Jim Carrey and Guns N' Roses, there are plenty of reasons why you should give this one a try. And here are four. Strong satirical edge. Whilst previous Dirty Harry movies focused on urban crime and justice, the Deadpool takes aim at the media and celebrity culture. The idea of people gambling on who will die next, particularly famous figures, serves as a clever critique of how society sensationalizes violence. This satirical undercurrent makes the film more than just another crime thriller. It's also a commentary on the spectacle of fame and the cost of celebrity. Number 2, a memorable villain. The killer in the Deadpool is one of the more unique adversaries in the series. Their motivation ties directly into the film's critique of celebrity culture, and their methods are both chilling and inventive. The interplay between Callahan and this villain creates a different dynamic from the previous entries as the stakes feel more personal and tied to Harry's longevity as a public figure himself. The third highlight that makes this movie worth watching is how producers and storytellers adapted Harry Callahan's character to reflect Eastwood's age. By the time the Deadpool came out, Eastwood was in his late 50s, and instead of ignoring that, the film smartly acknowledges it. Callahan is still tough as nails, but there's a subtle shift in how he approaches his work. He's more world-weary and reflective, recognizing that he's been around the block a few times. The role feels more grounded and mature, and Eastwood plays it with a veteran's wisdom, which gives the character a new layer of depth. And finally, the fourth reason to watch this movie sits with Eastwood's ability to balance grit and humor. Still about the actor's versatility, Eastwood demonstrates a more self-aware, even humorous side to Harry Callahan. There's still plenty of action and tension, mind you, but the film injects new moments of dark comedy, especially in how Harry navigates his own growing legend and the absurdity around him. This balance makes the movie feel lighter in some ways, while still delivering the intensity we expect from a Dirty Harry film. The Deadpool may have flown under the radar for some fans, but it's a sharp, satirical take on crime thrillers that shows Clint Eastwood aging gracefully in one of his most iconic roles. The film adapts to his stage in life while still giving audiences the gritty action and memorable one-liners they expect from Dirty Harry. If you're looking for a film that balances classic action with a fresh perspective on fame and media, this one's definitely worth revisiting. I wrap up this list with the fifth and final entry, the 1990s Cannes Film Festival film White Hunter, Black Heart. Besides being an excellent title, I see this movie as a pivotal step in Eastwood's career, which, along with 1988's Bird, kick-started a new era for this seasoned Hollywood icon, one marked by critical acclaim, renewed popularity, and accolades, and one that's still ongoing. Based on Peter Verdel's novel, White Hunter Black Heart is a fictionalized account of the making of John Huston's The African Queen and Huston's passion for big game hunting. In the movie, Eastwood steps into the shoes of John Wilson, a thinly veiled stand-in for real-life director John Huston. The story follows Wilson as he travels to Africa to shoot a movie, but instead becomes obsessed with hunting a wild elephant. The film offers a unique exploration of artistic obsession, morality, and the conflict between personal desires and professional duty. One of the reasons why White Hunter Black Heart was overlooked when originally released sits with the movie's unconventional narrative. The title isn't a straightforward action or adventure story. It's a character study wrapped in a commentary on ego, power, and colonialism. As a result, audiences expecting a traditional Clint Eastwood film were thrown off by the slower pace and philosophical tone. Additionally, the movie came out during a time when Eastwood was still primarily known for his tough guy roles, and this introspective performance was a shift from what many viewers had expected from him. The title was a box office bomb upon its release, despite some praise from a handful of critics. This underrated gem is begging to be found, and to motivate you to watch it, here are 4 reasons why you should. Number 1, the movie signals Eastwood's transition to becoming a serious filmmaker. As I mentioned already, the title was a turning point in Clint Eastwood's career, where he began to fully embrace his role, not just as an actor, but as a thoughtful and serious filmmaker. White Hunter Black Heart marked the early stages of the stylistic and thematic maturity that will later define movies like Unforgiven, Mystic River, and Letters from Iwo Jima. The film is more reflective, diving deep into themes of moral ambiguity and the consequences of obsession. It showcases Eastwood's evolving interest in complex, flawed characters and sets the stage for his later, more acclaimed works. The second reason sits with experiencing and witnessing the unfolding of a complex, morally flawed character. John Wilson is one of Eastwood's most complex roles. Unlike his usual righteous or stoic characters, Wilson is selfish, egotistical, and blinded by his desire to prove something to himself, no matter the cost. It's a risky performance portraying a man who's hard to sympathize with, but Eastwood's nuanced portrayal makes it compelling. This character study showcases the actor-turned-director's willingness to take on more challenging roles that explore human frailty and contradiction. Reason number 3, a fantastic metafilmic look at Hollywood. White Hunter Black Heart offers an intriguing behind-the-scenes glimpse of the film industry itself. By telling the story of a filmmaker caught between the desire to create art and his personal obsession, the film doubles as a critique of Hollywood's sometimes destructive pursuit of greatness. For fans of cinema history and anyone interested in the creative process, this layer makes the film stand out as more than just a drama. It's a meditation on the sacrifices made for art. And finally, the last reason, Africa's setting as a character. The African landscape plays a huge role in the movie, not just as a backdrop, but as a symbol of the wild, untamed nature of Wilson's desires. The vast open savanna mirrors the inner turmoil and recklessness, as the beauty of the setting contrasts sharply with the darker themes of human exploitation and dominance. This adds a rich visual texture to the movie, enhancing its themes of man versus nature, one that's reminiscent of the old Eastwood westerns. White Hunter Black Heart might not be the first film that comes to mind when thinking about Clint Eastwood, but it's essential viewing for anyone wanting to understand his evolution as a filmmaker. The film marked a significant shift in his career, laying the groundwork for the introspective and morally complex films that followed. It's a fascinating portrayal of a flawed artist and offers an insight into Eastwood's growing ambition behind the camera. If you are a fan of the actor/director's later works, White Hunter Black Heart is a must-watch to see where the journey truly began. And with this, I wrap up my exploration of Clint Eastwood's most underrated and underseen films. These movies might not always get the spotlight, but they each showcase different facets of his career, from actor to director, and prove why Clint Eastwood remains a cinematic legend.